On October 9, 1973, Henry Kissinger, the U.S. Secretary of State at the time, received an urgent and alarming message. The report stated that Israel had lost dozens of fighter jets and hundreds of tanks in the opening days of its war with Egypt. It was a moment of profound crisis for the Israeli military. Fast forward exactly 50 years to 2023, the United States received another urgent request from Israel. This time, the request was for immediate military and financial support for its operations in the Gaza Strip. While the circumstances of these two events differ, the American response highlights a significant shift in the speed and scale of their partnership. In 1973, it took about 10 days for Washington to organize an airlift of heavy weaponry. In 2023, the response took only hours. Almost immediately, American military cargo planes began landing at Nevatim Air Base, loaded with advanced munitions and technology. In both instances, a striking pattern emerged. Israel was not required to pay for this massive influx of military aid. This raises a fundamental question that often gets lost in the headlines. If Israel isn't paying for these billions of dollars in weapons, then who is? Before we dive into the mechanics of how this works, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps us continue producing well-researched content like this. To understand the financial side of this relationship, we first have to look at the unique legal nature of the bond between the United States and Israel. Surprisingly, unlike America's relationships with Japan or its NATO allies in Europe, there is no formal mutual defense treaty between Washington and Tel Aviv. Yet, Israel is the largest cumulative recipient of U.S. foreign assistance since World War II. To date, that support totals more than $300 billion in economic and military aid. This wasn't always the case. Back in the 1950s, the U.S. actually maintained an informal embargo on selling major offensive weapons to Israel. The turning point came in 1962. President John F. Kennedy decided to break this embargo by approving the sale of Hawk defensive missiles. The logic at the time was balance of power, a political concept where a country provides weapons to one side to ensure no single nation becomes too dominant. In this case, Washington wanted to counter the Soviet Union's arms sales to Egypt. Initially, these deals were structured as loans with interest. Israel was expected to pay the money back. But the 1973 war changed everything. As the Israeli military faced heavy losses in those first few days, Prime Minister Golda Meir sent desperate pleas to Washington for what she called saving Israel. President Richard Nixon responded by asking Congress for a $2.2 billion emergency package. This was a watershed moment. After the war, Congress made an extraordinary decision. They converted $1.5 billion of that aid into a grant, which is essentially a gift that does not need to be repaid. The remaining balance was turned into low-interest loans, many of which eventually had their interest waived. By the 1980s, the financial relationship shifted again. Israel was facing a severe economic crisis, with inflation hitting 400%. To prevent a total collapse, the administration of Ronald Reagan moved toward a policy where almost all military aid would be provided as non-repayable grants. So how does this work today? The primary mechanism is a program called Foreign Military Financing, or FMF. To put it simply, the FMF is a pot of money managed by the U.S. government. Every year, Congress allocates a specific amount of money for this program. This money comes directly from the taxes paid by American citizens. Washington views the FMF not just as a gift, but as a strategic investment. There is a major condition attached to this money. Nearly every country that receives FMF grants must use that money to buy weapons and services exclusively from American defense companies. This means the money essentially cycles back into the U.S. economy, supporting American defense contractors and jobs. However, Israel has historically enjoyed special status within this program that no other country receives. For decades, a unique provision allowed Israel to spend about 26% of its U.S. aid inside Israel to develop its own local defense industry. This helped Israel become a global leader in military technology. Furthermore, Israel is allowed to sign massive contracts for advanced hardware, like the F-35 fighter jet, and charge it to future aid installments. It's a bit like buying something on credit, but with the U.S. government guaranteeing the payments. To make this funding more predictable, The two countries moved away from year-to-year debates in the 1990s and toward 10-year agreements known as Memorandums of Understanding, or MOUs. These are politically binding frameworks that guarantee a set amount of money every year for a decade. The goal is to ensure Israel maintains what is called a qualitative military edge, a policy ensuring Israel always has more advanced technology than any potential adversary in the region. The first 10-year deal signed under Bill Clinton was worth about $21 billion. Under Barack Obama, that figure rose to $30 billion. The current agreement, which runs through 2028, is the largest in history, totaling $38 billion, or roughly $3.8 billion every single year. However, the events of late 2023 and 2024 have put this long-standing arrangement under a microscope. While the annual $3.8 billion was already guaranteed, the conflict in Gaza led Congress to approve an additional $14 billion in supplemental funding. By some estimates, the total U.S. military support committed between late 2023 and late 2025 could exceed $21 billion. This massive surge in spending has sparked a heated debate within the United States. For the first time in decades, the unconditional nature of this aid is being questioned by some lawmakers and segments of the public. They point out that while these billions are technically spent on American-made equipment, the human cost of the conflict in Gaza, the West Bank, and Lebanon is being linked back to the American taxpayer. At the same time, the Israeli government is reportedly looking even further ahead. There have been discussions about renegotiating the current 10-year deal to extend it for 20 years, potentially lasting until 2048. The relationship between the U.S. and Israel has evolved from modest loans to a multi-billion-dollar annual pillar of American foreign policy. It is a system designed to ensure regional stability and support the American defense industry, but it is also a system that relies entirely on the continued approval of the American political system and the public that funds it. As we look at the shifting political climate and the scale of the current conflict, it leads us to a difficult question. Do you believe that military aid to allies should remain unconditional, or should it be tied to specific outcomes and humanitarian standards? Share your thoughts in the comments below.